Industrial developments in Hong Kong took off in the 1950s along the population boom. In the 1960s, the demand for industrial land in Hong Kong exceeded the supply by the time. The government responded by reclamation and establishment of industrial estates. The manufacturing activities were extensively developed in industrial areas like Kwun Tong and Tsing. During 1970s to 80s, Hong Kong was experiencing a golden age of industrial development, especially in garment production and electronic manufacturing. Before 1986, Kwai was part of the Tsing new town. Large number of industrial buildings were built in Tsing and Kwai to accommodate their manufacturing activities. The strategic location of Kwai allowed it to become one of the main industrial areas in Hong Kong. In the 1980s, the economic reform and opening up policy of mainland China had pulled industrial activities away from Hong Kong. The advantages of low labor costs and looser regulations attract a large portion of the manufacturing businesses to Pearl River Delta and other parts of China. The industrial sector of Hong Kong has significantly diminished. Most of the remaining industries are knowledge-intensive and high-tech industries. While the economic structure of Hong Kong has transformed from industry-oriented to service-oriented, the heavy and polluting activities in industrial buildings were replaced by light industries, warehouse, and office in the recent years. Since 1999, a series of studies have been conducted about the industrial land in Hong Kong. Based on the studies, the Planning Department recommends to rezone about one-third of the industrial land to other specified uses. The rezoning was carried out through amendment of individual OZPs. The category OUB was introduced to provide flexibility for the use of existing industrial buildings. According to a study from the Planning Department, although the vacancy rates of industrial buildings have slightly decreased from the previous figure, there is still considerable amount of gross floor area being underutilized. By 2014, Kwai is the district with largest GFA of existing industrial space. At the same time, there are nearly 500,000 square meters of vacant space in these buildings. The study found that the transformation to non-industrial use has occurred more actively during the last 5 years in OUB areas than areas zoned as industrial use. Since 2008, the redevelopment project like KC100 and Kowloon Commerce Center start to emerge in Kwai Chung. These developed buildings are located on industrial land zoned as OUB. However, the majority of buildings in the district are yet to be redeveloped due to the land use restriction on this old industrial space. Most of them are used as warehouse or industry-related office. Moreover, despite the lower floors of industrial buildings are allowed to accommodate non-industrial activities, for example retail shop and services, the lower floors of old industrial buildings are often underutilized. Obviously, the development and use of industrial buildings are subject to institutional constraints, including the Town Planning Ordinance, Building Ordinance, and the government's lease. Town Planning Ordinance requires any uses not stated in the Column 1 Schedule of Uses in OZP to be permitted by Town Planning Board through planning application under Section 12A or Section 16 of the Ordinance. On the other hand, if the use does not comply with the restriction in land lease, a lease modification or temporary waiver has to be obtained from the Lands Department, and this process requires the owners of the entire building to put up an application. In response to the changing demands and the condition of industrial buildings, the Development Bureau has introduced a series of revitalization measures from 2010 to 2016. The measures target at industrial buildings aged 15 years or above and aimed to encourage the wholesale conversion or redevelopment of this building. Economic incentive in form of zero waiver fee was provided to approved buildings. The revitalization measures end on the 31st of March 2016. During the period of implementation, there were totally 125 applications approved under the measures. However, the measures are questioned about their effectiveness to benefit individual users. Criticism arises based on the waiver fee exemption arrangement and the increased rent of individual space since the implementation. Actually, there are some cases in which the industrial units have been transformed into more vibrant and welcoming space. An indoor football pitch was established on the 25th floor of TML Tower in Chunwan. TML Tower was developed in 2013. It is located within an OUB area. According to the developer, the user restriction is industrial use. This case shows us the potential of industrial space in terms of its recreational value instead of only commercial value. It is also demonstrating the flexibility of OUB areas, which was explicitly mentioned in the planning intention of such zoning. Although place of recreation, sports, or culture is not listed in the column 1 schedule of use for OUB, it is a column 2 use therefore possible to get planning permission from the Town Planning Board. Corresponding waiver application to Lands Department have to be done as well. Besides sport venue, the industrial space could be transformed into other uses, such as art studio. It is worthwhile to reflect on how to prevent these use from being displaced by high-value commercial use. As the revitalization measures end in March 2016, it is a good opportunity to review the government's policy towards industrial space. While the introduction of OUB have provided the possibility for more non-industrial use within the institutional framework, the incentives provided by the government were targeting on landlords or developers. Criticism of revitalization measures is developed around the rocketing rent and property value of industrial premises, which are mainly driven by office demand and hotel development. In fact, the rent level has become less affordable to individual tenants. In conclusion, the challenge is to prevent the commercial activities from displacing other non-industrial uses, while stimulating the use of underutilized industrial space. Administrative measures targeting on particular uses, for example, art studio and recreational space, should be introduced to aid the less profit-intensive users of industrial buildings. Releasing the potential of the industrial land is an important agenda. Nevertheless, the policy has to be responsive to the changing market and balance the interests among various stakeholders. This is difficult but crucial, as always.